Louisiana was once known as the Kingdom of Crawfish, where $500 million flows through flooded rice fields every year, supporting tens of thousands of Cajun families. But now the greatest threat comes not from drought or dried-out fields, but from shipping containers of cheap crawfish crossing the Pacific. With Chinese crawfish capturing over 70% of the tail meat market in the U.S. and selling for 40 to 60% less than the domestic catch, the red gold of Louisiana faces the risk of being driven out of its own home for the first time. Will a century-old industry be able to survive, or will it collapse just because of a price difference of a few dollars a pound? In Louisiana, crawfish is not merely food. It is a season, a ritual, and a source of pride that goes far beyond economics. Every year, when autumn ends, farmers begin pumping water into vast rice fields, turning green paddies into a shallow water world where crawfish breed, grow, and wait for the harvest. This is the famous rice-crawfish rotation model rice fields in the summer, crawfish ponds in the winter. No complex farms, no expensive equipment, just water, soil, and grit. Louisiana produces between 100 and 150 million pounds of crawfish every year. Behind those numbers are families who have worked this land for 3 or even 4 generations. These are men who wake up at 4 a.m. to pilot boats through the freezing fog, and women who man the boiling pots on weekends, bringing the whole community together around the glowing red water. Crawfish is culture. Crawfish is memory. Crawfish is how people in Louisiana say, "This is who we are." Do you have any memories involving crawfish or seafood boils? Let us know in the comments below. A harvest morning begins with the hum of engines echoing through the thick mist. The farmer pulls up trap after trap, dumping live, crimson, healthy crawfish into crates. They wriggle constantly, seemingly carrying the vitality of the Mississippi swamps within them. From the fields, the crawfish are taken to processing plants. The sound of machinery, the hiss of steam, and the clanging of steel create an industrial rhythm familiar to anyone living in Cajun country. The crawfish are sorted, washed, and then pressure boiled or frozen using the IQF method to ensure the meat remains sweet, crisp, and natural. For decades, 90% of the crawfish in Cajun restaurants across Texas and Louisiana came directly from these local farmers. In the spring, when boils took place in backyards, parking lots, churches, and festivals, crawfish became the bridge connecting millions of people. Then came a silent storm. Around the late 1990s, while Louisiana continued farming crawfish as a small family business, China was quietly building a massive industrial machine. They developed a crawfish farming system on a scale never seen before, producing over 2 million tons per year, nearly 40 times the production of Louisiana. Crawfish became a national dish in hundreds of Chinese cities, from Wuhan to Chongqing, from Nanjing to Beijing. Not stopping at domestic consumption, that massive supply began to flood the U.S. market. Initially, it was just small shipments, but soon, crawfish tail meat from China appeared at every wholesaler, on e-commerce platforms, and in budget-friendly restaurants. The strange thing was that the price of Chinese crawfish was unbelievably low. It was not a miracle. It was the sheer scale that the Chinese had silently built. Crawfish fields stretched to the horizon, combined with rice paddies in a rotation model that created a nearly infinite supply. Low labor costs, high-speed processing, and factory lines running 24/7 helped drive production costs down to a level Louisiana could never touch. A single worker in China could peel between 10,000 and 20,000 crawfish a day. Processing plants could handle hundreds of tons in a single shift. To put this in perspective, while Louisiana farmers are forced to sell at a loss for about $11 to $12 per pound just to stay competitive, Chinese crawfish tails are being offered for only $7.50 to $8.50 per pound. This is 30 to 37% cheaper, which is equivalent to nearly $4 less per pound. It goes without saying which option the average consumer would choose. That silent answer was like a knife twisting in the heart of the Louisiana crawfish industry, a sector built on tradition rather than industrialization. In just a few years, 70 to 80% of crawfish tail meat sold online and at wholesale hubs in the US was imported from China. Consumers, naturally, could not tell the difference. Restaurants had to survive, and Louisiana factories began to wobble. Orders dropped, leading to cut hours. Then came a heartbreaking reality. Many workers received temporary layoff notices for the first time in decades. The irony is that the hardest hit came from nature. Right before this. In 2023 and 2024, Louisiana experienced its worst drought in decades. Water levels in the fields dropped, water temperatures spiked, and oxygen levels plummeted, killing crawfish larvae en masse. Production in many areas collapsed by 60 to 90%, with some farms losing their entire season. Farmers accustomed to hardship could not believe the sight of traps coming up filled only with mud and dead, undersized crawfish. Damages were estimated at $141 million, a figure that breaks the heart. And at that exact moment when Louisiana was nearly brought to its knees by nature, Chinese crawfish appeared on the US market at half the price. On one side were fields cracked by heat. On the other were containers of cheap product being opened in cold storage facilities across America. Just when people thought this was simply a price war, another truth began to surface. The US government accused several Chinese companies of dumping crawfish into the US market, selling below the cost of production to strangle domestic businesses. Many Louisiana factories were pushed into a danger zone. Families who made a living processing crawfish stood on the verge of closing their doors. In this context, Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy stood up. He worked with bipartisan lawmakers to introduce a powerful bill, the China Trade Cheating Restitution Act. The bill required U.S. Customs to return $38.5 million in anti-dumping duties that were collected but not distributed, including $10.6 million specifically for American crawfish producers. During a hearing, Cassidy said something that brought tears to the eyes of many Louisiana farmers. Crawfish farming is the heart of Louisiana, and we will protect it to the end. He accused China of selling below cost, driving prices down to levels that defied economic laws, and creating an unfair playing field that was killing Louisiana businesses season by season. An industry representative told the press, "We are not losing because we are bad at what we do. We are losing because the price is not humanly possible. It was the cry of an industry backed into a corner. In the fields of St. Landry Parish or Acadia Parish, the pain is not found in cold economic reports. It is visible in the eyes of farmers who have spent their entire lives attached to the mud and water. Crawfish used to be the season of hope, a steady source of income every year that helped them send kids to college, fix roofs, and pay bank loans. But now every morning trip to the field is a gamble. Crawfish prices are in free fall. Fuel costs have skyrocketed. Natural bait is scarce after the drought. Labor wages had to increase to retain staff, and the market is flooded with imported tail meat that is half the price. It all crashed down on their shoulders at once, and there was no way out. Inside domestic factories, where the sound of machines once ran for 12 hours a day, there is now the strangest sound of all islands. Shifts were cut in half. Some production lines stopped completely. Workers, who were used to the bustle of the season, now wait for rare trucks of crawfish sent from the fields. In small towns like Eunice, Crowley, or Opelousas, the local economy depends on crawfish the way a heart depends on a beat. Every pound of crawfish sold feeds not just the farmer, but the gas station, the boat repair shop, the feed store, the roadside diner, and families who do not even farm directly. But when the crawfish harvest fails, that symbiotic chain begins to collapse. Diners close, gas stations go quiet, boat repair shops see no customers. Local schools begin to lack funding as the population shrinks. Crawfish used to be the anchor keeping young people in their hometowns, giving them stable jobs instead of forcing them to leave. But now, it has become the reason many families are packing their bags and leaving towns they have lived in for generations.
Don't worry, we are ahead of schedule. Yeah, this is the busiest we've been all year.
If people used to say crawfish keeps Louisiana from being abandoned, that phrase now carries a different tone. Crawfish is no longer strong enough to make people stay. And when the crawfish industry wobbles, all of Louisiana wobbles with it. The story becomes deeper when we realize that American consumers have unintentionally become part of this war. Chinese tail meat appears on Amazon, in wholesale markets, and in budget restaurants, sometimes even mislabeled as product of USA. Many chefs cannot tell the difference, or simply cannot afford the more expensive ingredients. They do not know that every time they choose a dish that is a few dollars cheaper, a Louisiana farmer loses a piece of hope. But Americans do not give up that easily, and people from Louisiana certainly do not. In the moments that seemed most desperate, a distinct Louisiana trait emerged: the solidarity of the community of farmers, fishermen, factories, and restaurants. They gathered into new alliances, strengthening long-standing crawfish associations, turning them from places to share techniques into a force for protecting the local economy. They knocked on the doors of congressional offices, demanding the government increase origin inspections nationwide. They were not afraid to sue companies that deliberately mislabeled products, selling imports under the name Product of USA, a practice that directly hurt local farmers.
That is a federal violation.
There were even shipments of Chinese goods caught red-handed being labeled "Product of USA" right in Houston and sold on Amazon, a blatant violation of federal law. And when the truth needed to be spoken louder, the people of Louisiana chose the most civilized yet sharpest way building back their own brand. They invested budgets into the 100% USA Crawfish campaign, a reminder to the American people that every dollar they spend impacts small towns along the bayou. They created a new identification system, from stickers and logos to QR codes that can be scanned right at the dinner table. You just lift your phone, and you immediately know which field that crawfish came from, which farm, and even which morning it was harvested. Every sticker, every line of a QR code is not just information. It is a bold declaration from Louisiana. Our crawfish deserves to be known, it deserves to be respected, and it deserves to be protected. In this lopsided battle, they chose not to run. They chose to stand up not for profit, but for the pride of a land that lives by the water, the mud, and the small red creatures that have been with them for generations. To understand the full story, we must look at both sides. In China, crawfish is not just an export product. It is a national industry worth over $40 billion. Creating jobs for millions, and is a source of culinary pride. Chinese companies insist they are not dumping, but simply producing more efficiently thanks to massive scale and optimized processing technology. And in a globalized market, everyone wants to survive. Bill Cassidy legislation might return millions of dollars to Louisiana, helping reinvest in factories, technology, and support for farmers. But to survive in the long run, Louisiana must change. They need new technology, smart irrigation systems, sustainable farming models, and value-added products like fresh packaged tail meat, organic crawfish, or premium brands akin to the champagne of France. Experts warn that if Louisiana does not transform, its market share could drop by 30 to 50% in the coming decade. That is a future no one wants to see. The crawfish war is not just between the US and China. It is a war between cheap prices and quality, between industrialization and tradition, between globalization and local identity, between the present and the future. Crawfish is just a symbol. The real crack lies in how global trade can wound small communities, communities that have preserved American culture for generations. And when you look into the boiling red pot of a Louisiana spring, you will understand that this is not just a dish. This is the story of people trying to hold on to their profession, their memories, and their identity against the pressure of a world changing too fast. If you want to continue discovering stories that have not been fully told about small creatures making huge changes and industries fighting to survive, please like the video, hit subscribe, and follow the channel so we can meet again on the next journey.